Now for this part, right, risk management, I begin this video by talking about there are a lot of stakeholders, and largely in any organization, any country is managed by the federal agencies. So the management of risk assessment, right, and the outcome, what do we do with it, has a lot of people who has say in it. So when we elect to vote in a cabinet ministers, I think it's important what is the person's background, what kind of influence he has, and his CV record. So here we have a summary on what do we do with the risk assessment. Now, in general, we have identification of risk, how toxic it is, and then extent of exposure in terms of duration, long or short, and then the kind of human risk and ecological risk that link up to the environment, and how to manage and mitigate the risk involved. So let's say we can't lower down the risk, but we can allow ourselves not to be exposed to the environment so long. So who manage the risk? By ourselves, right? The people who are exposed there, or the government organization, the committee, right? And also the organization who owns the place that has the risk. And if you're a worker for a company, then the company has a duty. The onus is on them to make sure that the environment that we work in is safe. And that goes down to the policy. So in Singapore, we have the Work Safety Health Act in place. So that manage the risk exposed by the workers. So that's why people like to come in Singapore and work, even though it's quite expensive here, but we are pretty safe. Now, because we do not know the substance toxicity until we measure it and test it, there are just so many untested chemicals and calculations and combinations. So science, right, can never eliminate many uncertainty about the accompanied risk assessment. Now, in this world that's very uncertain, there are two main philosophical approaches in categorizing whether a new substance is safe or dangerous. The two approaches exist to determine whether something is safe. Now, one approach is to assume that the substances are all harmless until they are being shown harmful. So it is like an innocent until proven guilty approach. Because, right, thorough testing of every single existing chemicals and a combination of them is really long, complex, complicated, and expensive. So this innocent until proven guilty approach has the virtue of facilitating the technological innovations and economical activity. Basically allows progress, But the thing is, the disadvantage is that, right, when we put a lot of items or new chemicals and substances that might turn out to be harmful and dangerous later on, then somebody's head gonna roll. Like in the case of the pesticides, DDT. Now, the other approach is to assume that the substances are harmful unless shown to be harmless. So this is a more cautious kind of approach. So this approach enables us to identify the troublesome toxicants before they are released to the environment. But the thing is, this may impede the innovation and technological advancement and economical progress. Because, right, we think that everything is not safe, and then only once we validate that it is safe, then we progress. But that may kill off many years of prime research. Now, so the choice of the philosophical approach has a direct implications for policy. And every country, vary how they blend these two approaches. Maybe they will have a sort of equilibrium, a number, not to lean on one side when it comes to regulating the synthetic substances. So the European nations have recently embarked into a policy course that incorporates the precautionary principle, whereas the US largely follows the innocent until proven guilty approach. Like, for example, the compounds in the cosmetics in the makeup, the foundation, they require no FDA review, which is very strict, or approval before being sold to the public. Now, the EPA, if you have recalled them, the Environmental Protection Agency in the USA, they are only partly effective. So in the States, right, there's something called the Toxic Substance Control Act that directs the EPA to monitor thousands of industrial chemicals that's manufactured in or imported towards the USA. And they range from the PCB to lead to the asbestos, BPA we went through, and other kinds of compounds, the plasticizers that's housed in the polymers. So this act gives the agency EPA some power to regulate these substances and ban them if they are found to possess excessive risk. But the thing is, many public health advocates, right, they view this TSCA as being too weak. Why people say it's too weak? Now, In the history of TSCA, right to the start of it, there were 62,000 chemicals that exist. But now, it has swollen up to 83,000. But what do you make out about these 83,000 chemicals? Only 5 has been restricted. So the health advocates note that, right, the screening requires the industry is minimum, and we need to have more extensive and meaningful testing because it can't be only 5 among 83,000 chemicals are toxic. So people are saying that this act is not stringent enough because we are allowing too many new substances that might be toxic to the society, and we should have more proof for non-toxicity such that these synthetic chemicals are tested really thoroughly first before it's being brought to the market. And because the registrations of these chemicals process takes economic consideration into account, so the critic says that, right, it allows dangerous, hazardous chemicals to be approved if the economic benefits are judged so to outweigh the hazards. So there's some kind of biases, right? People will try to influence to make sure they gain money first, profit to in the expense of people's lives. Now, so here we see examples of challenges in weighing the intangible risk involving human health and environmental quality against the tangible and the quantitative numbers of the economics becomes very apparent here. Now, the EU, right, European Union, is taking the world's most courageous step towards testing and regulating the manufactured chemicals. How so? We call it the REACH program. The REACH stands for Registrations, Evaluation, Authorization, Restriction of Chemicals. So this REACH lastly shifts the burden of proof for testing chemical safety from the government agency, from the government to the industry, to the people who create the new chemicals, and it requires the new chemical substances that are produced or imported in amounts over 1 metric ton per year to be registered with a new EU agency. So if you have a new food product, right, and you manufacture more than 1 ton per year, you have to register this new chemical, be it a new kind of fragrance, a new kind of sugar. So this agency evaluates the industry research and then decide whether the chemical is deemed safe and should be approved, right? Or whether it is not safe and could be restricted, or whether more testing is needed. So it is expected that the REACH requires about 30,000 of chemicals to be registered. So here we're putting the ownership to the industry, to the people who want to bring in new chemicals. So we can't always blame the government. Now, in conclusion for this topic in environmental toxicology, so we have learned that the international agreements like the REACH and the Stockholm Conventions, right, they represent a sign that the governments are trying to act to protect the world's people, the wildlife, ecosystem from toxic substances and other environmental hazards. At the same time, people come with solutions, right? But the thing is, not many people will agree. And this kind of solutions might not only come from government regulations alone. The consumer, we have to exercise thorough care and be discerning enough to eschew those that we think is dangerous. When we expose to the market with many choices, well, that influences our judgment and decision what to buy. Now, so it is important that we consumers have the full information from the scientific research regarding the risks involved. And once the scientific results are out, we need to adopt a good philosophical approach to risk management to determine what policy decisions are made. Whether the burden of proof is being laid, to the industry or the government, we can never have a complete scientific knowledge of any risk. So, we have to have an open mind and make choices based on the available information. But of course, we have exposed ourselves to the availability bias. What is only available to us, what is not shown, we can't give thoughts about. So synthetic chemicals have brought us many modern convenience. Large food supply, medical advancements that save and extend our human life, make it a better life. We as a human society, right, will be very different without these new chemicals. And yet for a safer and a happier future, we should also safeguard the well-being of both the people and the environment in the ecosystem. Depends on knowing the risk that some of these hazards pose and having the means to have a place to phase out the harmful substances and try to replace them with the new ones. So by now, you should be able to know the goals of environmental health and identify the major environmental health hazards, to describe the types of toxic waste, substances in the environment, and the factors that affect the toxicity, defense mechanisms. We also will be able to illustrate the transport of toxic substances and how they affect the ecosystem, discuss the hazards, the effects, risk assessment, risk management, and to compare the different kinds of philosophy, the approaches to risk, and how they are related to the policy. So thank you very much for listening in. I'll see you next time. Take care.